You could feel the anger tonight at a Board of Trustees meeting in Thornton Township. The board and citizens looking for accountability to their finances, while the township supervisor...
Good evening. An illegal appointment. That's what the trustees I talked to are calling this. They say the news took them by surprise, and now they're talking to legal counsel to figure out their next step.
Tiffany Henyard has always managed to grab the spotlight, but this time, it looks like she's in over her head. Rumors are swirling that the self-proclaimed super mayor is secretly cutting a deal with the FBI to save herself from a one-way trip to a cell. Could this be her last move in a desperate attempt to escape the fate that seems to be closing in on her? Word on the street is that Henyard has realized her reign is coming to an end and she's trying to take everyone down with her. But here's the twist. It's not just Henyard who's in hot water.
Ben Bradley continues his exclusive reporting from Dalton.
So, how did we get here? It's been a wild ride with Henyard at the helm of Dolton, Illinois, a small village that somehow found itself at the center of a storm involving corruption, mismanagement, and betrayal. Just a few months ago, she was riding high, untouchable in her role as both mayor of Dolton and supervisor of Thornton Township. She built her image as a super mayor who was out to clean up the village, but as it turns out, she may have been cleaning up in more ways than one.
For a year now, we've been reporting on questionable spending by a South suburban politician named Tiffany Henyard, but we only knew half the story.
Now, sources close to the situation are whispering that she's been quietly negotiating with the feds, trying to strike a deal to avoid being dragged into court. And the craziest part? She might just be ready to sell out her allies, the very people who helped her build her empire, the ones who, until recently, stood by her side, backing her every move. It seems Henyard's loyalty only goes so far, and now that the walls are closing in, she's willing to throw anyone under the bus if it means saving herself.
But it saddens my heart that you are up here at this special meeting and not downstairs where we have big bingo.
The talk of the town is that Henyard's legal team, two high-powered criminal defense attorneys who have represented some big names, are working overtime to cut her the best deal possible. But what does that mean for her inner circle? The same people who helped her pull off what some are calling one of the most audacious power grabs in local politics are now looking over their shoulders, wondering if they're next on the chopping block.
Well, Mr. Lacey is absolutely not guilty of all 9 counts. I believe he's cooperating. And if you cooperate, you have to admit your guilt first.
Henyard's rise to power wasn't just a solo act. She had a cast of characters working behind the scenes, people who played key roles in what has now become a full-blown political scandal. Take Keith Freeman, for example. Freeman was once Henyard's closest ally, her right-hand man in Dolton, and her trusted advisor in Thornton Township. Together, they ran the village with an iron grip. Freeman, a former village administrator and the registered agent of Henyard's controversial charity, was instrumental in helping Henyard maintain control over Dolton's finances, until he wasn't.
One way that the government always does it is to go and investigate people around her, and that's what they're doing here.
Freeman was hit with federal charges for bankruptcy fraud, and just like that, their partnership soured. Henyard reportedly tried to cut him loose, even attempting to fire him at a village board meeting. But the trustees weren't having it. Freeman's fall from grace is just one example of how quickly Henyard is willing to sever ties when things get messy. But now rumors suggest Freeman might be cooperating with investigators. If that's true, it could spell disaster for Henyard and her entire operation.
You know, wrong is wrong, and there's a time to hold people responsible and accountable for their actions.
Then there's Lewis Lacey, the former deputy police chief of Dolton, another key player in Henyard's circle. Lacey was no stranger to controversy. He was charged with bankruptcy fraud, just like Freeman. But that didn't stop Henyard from reappointing him to lead the police department despite protests from the village trustees. Lacey's appointment was just another sign of Henyard's defiance, her determination to maintain control no matter the cost. And just like Freeman, Lacey was loyal to Henyard until the feds came knocking.
Coming in, I mean, unfortunately, we knew it was going to be a little messy, but it's just something we felt important that had to be done, that should be done. So, but like I said,
Lacey, too, is now caught in the crosshairs of the federal investigation, and some believe he could be another pawn in Henyard's game of survival. His name has been linked to questionable overtime payouts, with reports showing that he raked in over $200,000 in overtime pay despite not being eligible for that money. The timing of these payouts has raised eyebrows, with many wondering if they were part of a larger scheme orchestrated by Henyard. But now that he's facing serious legal trouble, Lacey might be looking to strike a deal of his own.
The township residents are paying for her fund.
And it doesn't end there. Henyard's former assistant turned trustee, Carmen Carlisle, was once considered a loyal supporter of the supermayor. But as the scandal unfolded, Carlisle turned on Henyard, accusing her of unethical behavior and predatory practices. Carlisle claims that Henyard used her position to manipulate employees and vendors, funneling taxpayer money into her personal projects and luxury expenses. For the past 2 years, Henyard has manipulated employees, vendors, and residents, using her position to increase her influence, all while projecting a false image of success, Carlisle said in a statement. It's a damning accusation, one that puts Carlisle at odds with the woman who once trusted her with her inner circle. Carlisle's whistleblower claims didn't just end with vague accusations. She laid out details about how Henyard's administration spent exorbitant amounts of money on first-class flights, 5-star hotels, and high-end dining, all on the taxpayer's dime. One trip to Austin, Texas, reportedly cost the village over $20,000, with Henyard and her entourage racking up bills at luxury hotels and steakhouse dinners. And let's not forget the $33,000 Henyard spent in a single day on Amazon purchases. These kinds of expenses weren't just frowned upon, they've become central to the ongoing federal investigation into her misuse of funds.
Who would make a one-day purchase of over $40,000 to Amazon? And the main thing is, what is it?
Henyard's spending habits have been scrutinized for months, with village trustees repeatedly calling for transparency. The village's general fund balance went from a surplus of over $5 million in 2022 to a deficit of nearly $4 million by 2024, a jaw-dropping financial collapse that many believe is directly tied to Henyard's reckless spending. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who was hired to investigate Henyard's financial dealings, found that police costs had skyrocketed during Henyard's time in office, with some officers making more in overtime than their base salaries. One officer made over $100,000 in overtime pay in a single fiscal year, more than double his salary.
We needed those officers to be on the street fighting crime. And instead, we have several officers that are riding around protecting America.
But here's where it gets really interesting. As the feds dig deeper into Henyard's finances, some are wondering if this whole mess is going to take down more than just the mayor. With so many of her allies already facing legal trouble, it's becoming clear that this isn't just about one person. This is about a network of individuals who've worked together to enrich themselves at the expense of the village. And now Henyard is reportedly ready to point the finger at each and every one of them if it means she can walk away without serving time.
What I think is interesting about this case, this story, is you can be highly legal and unethical at the same time.
In recent weeks, the tension between Henyard and the village board has reached a boiling point. At a board meeting, village trustees voted to block Henyard from using credit cards for unapproved purchases, and they've placed restrictions on how much money can be spent on special events. These moves are seen as direct attempts to curb Henyard's influence and prevent her from continuing her lavish spending spree. But Henyard isn't backing down. She's vetoed multiple board decisions and continues to push forward with her own agenda, even as the investigation tightens around her.
I am about to address some things as the supervisor. There will be no comments, there will be anything. It'll just be me addressing you guys to tell you what's going on.
And what about those who once supported her but are now speaking out against her? Thornton Township trustee Chris Gonzalez, who once stood by Henyard's side, has been vocal about his disapproval of her spending. He's called her out for approving events that weren't even in the township's budget, like the infamous Taste of Thornton Township event, where Henyard shelled out $85,000 for a mini concert featuring R&B singer Cake, Whited, and rapper Jay Holiday. The event was a flop, with barely anyone showing up, but Henyard still paid the performers top dollar for their 30-minute sets. Gonzalez's criticism is just one more sign that the cracks in Henyard's support system are growing wider.
By the Lansing Journal, trustee Chris Gonzalez said,
"Or the administration can adhere to some financial limits. We're not looking to necessarily..."
As the rumors of Henyard's potential deal with the FBI swirl, the question on everyone's mind is, who's going to take the fall with her? If she does decide to sell out her allies, it could mean the end of their careers, and possibly their freedom. Will Freeman, Lacey, and Carlisle be dragged down with her? Or will they too cut their own deals to avoid prison time? The clock is ticking, and as more details emerge about Henyard's secret negotiations, it's clear that this story is far from over. What we do know is that the scandal has already rocked Dolton to its core, and it's only a matter of time before the next bombshell drops. But one thing's for sure, Henyard's days of ruling the village with an iron fist are numbered. The only question now is, who's going down with her? But let's take a step back and look at how Tiffany Henyard ended up in this mess in the first place. The story of her downfall didn't happen overnight, though it sure feels like it's spiraling out of control now. Henyard's time in office has been marked by scandal after scandal, but nothing compares to the level of corruption and chaos she unleashed on the village of Dolton. Her so-called super mayor image was built on promises of cleaning up the town. Yet it didn't take long before people started to realize that Henyard wasn't cleaning up the village. She was cleaning up the village's bank accounts. Residents who once believed in her vision of a better Dolton are now watching their town crumble, both financially and morally. It's no wonder Henyard has earned herself the nickname Dolton Dictator. And the evidence, it's everywhere. Let's start with the basics. Misuse of funds. This is where Henyard's troubles began to snowball. She wasn't just careless with Dolton's finances, she was reckless. From the moment she took office, she treated the village's budget like her personal credit card, shelling out thousands of dollars on lavish trips, high-end restaurants, and luxury hotels.
That's right, John and Terrence. Tonight's meeting had a much different tone than what we've experienced previously at Dolton City Council meetings. Now, the room was full of Henyard supporters, and they wanted me to be sure to tell you that they applauded for her several times as she talked about the township being in a great place financially. Thornton Township Supervisor Tiffany Henyard.
Remember that trip to Austin, Texas? It wasn't just a quick getaway. Henyard and her entourage spent more than $20,000 on a 5-day stay, with over $11,000 spent at the upscale Fairmont Austin Hotel. That's just one trip. Similar indulgences were reported on other taxpayer-funded excursions to New York, Atlanta, and Portland. The village trustees tried to get a handle on the spending spree, but Henyard wasn't having it. She vetoed their attempts to investigate her spending, all while racking up over $67,000 in travel expenses in just a 5-month span.
This administration is shameful. Y'all are a disgrace.
We're watching the fall of this administration.
And it wasn't just the travel. There were the $33,000 she blew on Amazon in a single day. Let that sink in for a second. $33,000 on Amazon. And to make matters worse, there are no clear records explaining what that money was spent on. It's no wonder the village's finances tanked under her leadership. By the time former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was brought in to conduct an independent investigation, the village was already in deep financial trouble. Lightfoot's preliminary report revealed that Dolton's general fund had dropped from a healthy $5 million surplus to a staggering $3.5 million deficit.
Staffers also distributed a breakdown of the township's finances from 2017 to current, where Henyard's team says years ago they were in a deficit of more than $2 million. And now, today, under her administration, her team says there's a surplus of more than $6 million.
What's even more alarming is how Henyard's administration handled overtime pay for the police department. Under her watch, 2 officers were making more in overtime than their base salaries, with one officer receiving over $100,000 in overtime pay alone. And remember, this is a village with a population of just over 20,000 people. What could possibly justify this kind of spending? But the financial mismanagement is only part of the story. Henyard's behavior throughout her time in office has been nothing short of outrageous. From the very beginning, it became clear that she wasn't playing by the rules. In fact, she was making her own.
They'll turn up more and more information. They'll turn up more leads. They may turn up more witnesses. They may find a cooperator. They may find an informant, all which will benefit the investigation tremendously.
But based on what we know now, if you're Tiffany Henyard, how are you feeling?
I would be nervous.
Henyard has been accused of using her power to intimidate and retaliate against her opponents, silencing critics, and consolidating control over Dolton and Thornton Township. One of the most notorious examples of her bullying tactics was when she ordered her personal police detail to follow residents who dared to speak out against her. This personal security force, funded by the very taxpayers she was bleeding dry, became an extension of her power. The former Dolton police chief, Robert Collins, even spoke out about how Henyard's constant demand for a large security detail crippled the department's ability to fight crime.
I do not handle anything as relates to with credit cards. As you heard me speak today in my board meeting about, I do not handle that.
Some of those charges are for you, though.
No, sir.
You didn't go to Las Vegas? What is that?
No comment.
Instead of having officers on the streets, they were following Henyard around, acting as her personal bodyguards. We needed those officers to be on the street fighting crime, Collins said, but instead they were riding around protecting the mayor. Henyard's heavy-handed approach didn't stop there. She also found ways to retaliate against her political enemies. Take the case of Valeria Stubbs, a former trustee and vocal critic of Henyard. Stubbs' home was shot up in the middle of the night, and though no one was harmed, Stubbs has repeatedly suggested that the attack was an act of intimidation orchestrated by Henyard.
Gardner says he's been harassed and his business raided and shut down by Dolton police. He believes because he refused to make a donation to a civic event sponsored by Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard.
And I talked to a couple of agents and I explained them what was going on. I gave them all my paperwork.
While there's no concrete evidence linking Henyard to the shooting, the incident certainly adds to the growing list of allegations against the mayor. Henyard's behavior has become so brazen that she even filmed herself shoveling snow from Stubbs' driveway during a snowstorm, calling Stubbs her hater in a bizarre attempt to taunt her. It was a move that shocked many, but for those familiar with Henyard's antics, it was just another day in Dolton. The misuse of taxpayer dollars, the manipulation of village resources, the abuse of power, it all points to a woman who believed she was untouchable. And for a while, it seemed like she was. But now, with the FBI breathing down her neck, Henyard's empire is crumbling.
Yeah, we've been reporting for nearly 2 years on allegations of corruption surrounding Henyard in her capacity as Dolton mayor and Thornton Township supervisor. And now we've learned from multiple sources that federal agents are in fact interviewing witnesses as part of a possible investigation that may or may not result in charges.
The federal subpoenas served to Dolton and Thornton Township are a clear indication that the feds aren't just sniffing around, they're closing in. These subpoenas are reportedly seeking records on everything from the village's finances to Henyard's political fund and even her cancer charity, which, by the way, has come under scrutiny for its own shady dealings. Yes, the Tiffany Henyard Cares Foundation. The foundation was supposed to be a charitable effort aimed at helping cancer patients, but like everything else tied to Henyard, it's shrouded in controversy. Not only has the foundation failed to file the required financial disclosures with the state, but it also received a $10,000 donation from Thornton Township on the very day it was chartered.
To offer to our seniors, and they told us, your card doesn't work. And I stand in the fight because I want the boys and girls of the next generation to see what it looks like to come out of controversy and to come out of all the hatred unscathed. At the end of the day, God gives the test to his strongest soldiers.
And that's not all. Documents show that much of the foundation's expenses were charged to the village's credit card, with over $11,000 spent on hotels, meals, photographers, and even DJs. These revelations have led many to question whether the foundation was ever really about charity, or if it was just another vehicle for Henyard to funnel money into her personal projects. As Henyard's legal troubles continue to mount, it's becoming increasingly clear that her time is running out.
All I can tell you is that I'm not the one on anything. That's the only thing I can tell you right now. So I'm just trying to answer to the.
So you're saying there's a foundation that's not registered, but it has nothing to do with you?
Correct. That's true.
Okay.
That's
so you're not aware of any of the work that they've done, money that they've raised, anything along those lines?
Correct.
The rumors of her deal with the FBI seem more plausible with each passing day, especially considering how much she stands to lose. If convicted of the charges she's facing, Henyard could be looking at serious prison time, which is why many believe she's ready to cut her losses and turn on her allies. But will her deal be enough to save her? And more importantly, what will it mean for the rest of her inner circle? It's hard to imagine that Henyard will walk away from this without taking down a few people with her.
Very appreciative to receive the information today. We have the best mayor ever. I've been here since 1993. And she's the best we ever had.
You know, you're doing a lot of programs, good programs for the, the senior citizens, and you're doing a lot of programs for, people who are on a fixed budget. But what about the people, the blue-collar people who are still carrying this, this town?
There's already speculation that Keith Freeman, her former right-hand man, has been cooperating with the feds for months. If that's true, Henyard might not have as much leverage as she thinks. Freeman's involvement in the village's financial mismanagement has been well documented, but he's not the only one in Henyard's circle who's in trouble. Lewis Lacey, the former deputy police chief, is another key figure who could find himself in the hot seat. Lacey's role in the overtime pay scandal has already raised red flags, and now that he's facing federal charges for bankruptcy fraud, it's only a matter of time before the feds start asking questions about his relationship with Henyard.
Y'all thought that I was young, dumb, didn't know nothing, was gonna let y'all come and manipulate me. I didn't do any of that. So because I didn't do any of that, you guys started this whole smear campaign.
If Lacey decides to flip and testify against Henyard, it could be the final nail in her coffin. And then there's Carmen Carlisle, the former ally turned whistleblower. Carlisle's decision to speak out against Henyard has already shaken up the local political scene. But if she has more dirt on the mayor, she could be a valuable asset to the federal investigation.
You don't know if you were in Las Vegas?
Of course I do.
Were you?
It's not paid by them.
Did you fly first class to Las Vegas?
Any other questions?
Carlisle's claims of unethical behavior and manipulation within the Henyard administration are damning, and her insider knowledge of how things operated behind the scenes could provide the feds with the evidence they need to bring Henyard down. As the investigation unfolds, it's clear that this isn't just about Tiffany Henyard anymore. It's about a web of corruption that has engulfed an entire village, leaving its residents bankrupt and disillusioned. The people of Dolton trusted Henyard to lead them, but instead, she led them into financial ruin.
We reached out to the FBI, which said it is policy for the agency not to comment on the nature, existence, or non-existence of any investigation that may be occurring. A public relations firm responded on behalf of the mayor, saying neither Henyard or the village of Dolton have received any subpoenas or been contacted by the FBI or any other law enforcement agency.
Now, as the FBI closes in, the question remains: how many more secrets will come to light before this saga is over? And while the rumors of Henyard's secret deal continue to swirl, there's one thing we know for sure. This isn't the last we've heard of Dolton's supermayor. Whether she cuts a deal or goes down fighting, one thing is certain: Tiffany Henyard's reign is coming to an end, and she won't be walking away unscathed. The only question left is, who will be the next to fall? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on this ongoing saga.